Welcome to the Recover You podcast. I'm Kylene.
And I'm Patrick.
We are a couple in recovery
from sex addiction
and betrayal trauma. Together, we share our story to encourage you on your journey. It's here that we talk about sex addiction, betrayal trauma, mental, emotional, and physical health, faith, and anything and everything needed to recover you to your most authentic self that God created you to be. Welcome to this week's episode of Recover You. Hello, Patrick.
Hello, Kylene. Happy whatever day you're listening to this is. In our case, it's a Saturday, so happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday.
Well, today I'm excited. We have a very specific question. We're going to be answering someone's question that is someone that's in the Recover You Facebook group for betrayed partners. So if you are a betrayed partner that listens to this podcast, please make sure to join the Facebook group as well, because you can ask specific questions. And within the group itself, I try to engage and answer the questions from my perspective. This particular question I thought is very universal and also would be very helpful to have Patrick's perspective, just based on the nature of the question. And so with the individual's consent, she has shared she's happy that we share her question, and she's even happy if we share her name. So we have a very specific question coming in from Rachel today, and we're very excited to answer it. So should I just start with that? Start by reading it, Patrick?
Absolutely.
All right. Let me pull it up here. The question is, I continue to struggle with what's quote unquote normal human behavior and what's addict behavior. For instance, my husband says he may see something or someone unintentionally because they can't wear blinders and find something attractive. But that's as far as it goes. He doesn't take another look or think about it later. It's just a noticing, and it registers in his brain that it's attractive. I asked him to clarify what exactly would be something he would find attractive. Like, is it her face, hair, eyes, boobs, butt? He said it could be any of those things. My question and my struggle is, should he be noticing boobs and butts at all if he's in true recovery? I can totally understand seeing someone's face and it just naturally registers that they are attractive to you. Maybe the boobs and butts are the same for non-SA men. But what about a man with a sex addiction? I feel stupid even asking this, but it continues to be something I struggle with, and I'm not really sure why. Lord knows he's done so much worse than looking and finding women attractive. I think I'm so scared of being bamboozled again, so I desperately try to educate myself on every possible thing in order to prevent it. I think she just answered her own question in terms of like why it bothers her. That's at right. The end there. Yeah. That's 100%. Yep. I think universal is our brains are going to really try to find, hey, like, can the wool be pulled over my eyes again?
Right.
So we're going to be trying to analyze every possible situation. But I thought this was great because this really goes to the core wounding, and it goes to the fear of like living in the real world with other human beings that are attractive as somebody who has been sexually and intimately betrayed. And so I also thought that it would be really helpful to have, like, I can answer this. I can talk about my perspective as a betrayed partner, but I also thought it would be really helpful for betrayed partners to hear from someone that is in recovery. Like, what does recovery look like in terms of how you view other women's bodies now? What does it look like in terms of, I think the key for, I'm just going to be like really, and hopefully maybe pause this if you're listening to this out loud and there's kids in the room, because I already said boobs and butts, but I think I'm going to use maybe a couple other words that are a little, not 5-year-old friendly, but we'll try to keep it as clean as possible, but while being as clear as possible. But like, the key, I think, if people really want to be super blunt about it, they want to know, like, in recovery, are you going to be aroused, like sexually aroused by other human beings in recovery? And what does that look like? Is that healthy? Is it not healthy? Is that something that we can truly expect to never happen again? That sort of thing. So I think that's really getting to the core wounding, is like, I don't want my spouse sexually activated by anyone other than me. And is that a reasonable question? So we're going to dive into all of that. Are you excited?
I'm excited.
And then there's a couple, as we talk about this, there's a couple resources that I'm going to utilize to kind of pull from. And the first one, before I give Patrick the stage here, so to speak, I actually put this question into AI, And it had a very succinct response, which I always think is like, it's actually very similar. I was like, ooh, good, go me. I answered this question in the group yesterday, and AI just said mostly the same thing that I did, but probably in a clearer and more succinct way, because it's like one paragraph and mine was probably like 5. So this was ChatGPT's answer to this, or AI. It wasn't exactly ChatGPT. To address your question briefly, it's common for humans, including men in recovery, to notice physical attributes like faces, bodies, or specific features as attraction. It's a natural instinct. For a man recovering from sex addiction, the key distinction lies in intent and behavior. Whether the noticing is fleeting and passive, normal, or if it leads to fixation, objectification, or acting out, potentially addictive. Your husband's description of noticing without dwelling aligns with what many would consider typical, but your concern is valid, given past experiences and the fear of being misled. Open communication, setting clear boundaries, and possibly exploring these feelings with a therapist familiar with addiction can help clarify what feels safe and healthy for you both. You're not stupid for asking. This reflects a thoughtful effort to protect your peace and navigate a complex situation. I kind of thought that was great.
Yeah, no, it
Right.
was really, really good.
All right, so that hit a lot of the points. But Patrick, from a recovered addict perspective, and I will be over here as the betrayed partner going, but this hurts and this is the wounding and what about this? And it's hard for us to believe. I'm going to be that perspective. What is your thought in terms of this question?
So I think what I'd like to do is just kind of remind everybody in my own way to summarize what sex addiction is. Sex addiction is
it's an intimacy disorder.
It's an intimacy disorder, but in many, many cases, and there may be the one exception out there, but in many, many of the cases, it's the objectification of somebody else's body, right? Body parts, whatever that may be, to soothe or to address wounds that are deep inside of you, right? So you're objectifying, you're using people is essentially what you're doing. And whether that's through the viewing of pornography, whether that's the use of affairs, whatever that may be, you're using other people. So you're not viewing people as a whole person. You're viewing them as a means to an end to soothe your wounds. And everybody has a different, what they call arousal template. And it's not, sometimes people make the mistake of saying, well, you look at this and then you are sexually aroused. That's actually not it's a part of the picture. The full arousal template is you experience hardness in your life or some sort of pain or some sort of anxiety-inducing thing, and through that process end up arriving at the state where you sexually act out with pornography, affairs, whatever that is, right?
The arousal is then outside of the box that would be considered normal, healthy arousal.
It's a much bigger box.
Because it was an avenue utilized to medicate.
Right.
Okay.
Right. So as you heal, in the healing, a lot of times people, when they start their healing process, and hopefully I'm going to get around to answering the question here, but when they start their healing process, and we've talked about this as well, is the desire is to no longer do the sexually acting out. Right? So you go, I never want to look at pornography again. I never want to have an affair again. I never want, and that's all you really, really want. But then you Coco's being silly here in the room. But then as you learn how to heal, you understand why these root wounds have led you there. So you start to address these wounds. So over time, as you gain a broader perspective of your arousal template, then that in turn helps you navigate through the world in a much more healthy way, right? Mm-hmm. So if I think anytime you're looking at somebody, and we can use a couple of examples, but anytime you're looking at someone as less than a whole person, right, I think that would indicate to you that there's some additional healing that has to take place. I never want to.
So just to clarify that really quickly, do you see a person and think they have an attractive body, and maybe you notice a particular their feet are very, I don't know, it's like a random example, but like, okay, do you say, oh, they have a perfect nose, or, any part of their body, right? So do you see a person just notice, oh, they're very attractive in this area? Or are you individualizing a part of their body and then sexualizing it. Are you saying that's kind of the difference?
Right. So here could be a good example. Somebody walks in front of you and you go, wow, their hair is really like full and pretty, right? That's not sexualizing. Versus they walk in front of you and I don't really want to use a bad example, you know what I mean? But you say something about maybe a sexualized part of them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
generally what they're sexualizing is the chest area or the rear.
Right. Because those are, you can argue those are physical intimacy things, right? So if you take a particular part of their body and treat it in a physically intimate way, an example, that's inappropriate.
Right. The example of something being unhealthy there would be, like, let's say, just to give a little bit more of an extreme example, there's somebody that is wearing like a sweatshirt, for example. It's like so far beyond like not sexual in nature at all. And someone has a habit of, I'm going to visually check out the chest because that's something sexual. And I am doing that because I sexualize that part of their body. And to your point, I'm not viewing them as a whole human being and go, oh, they're an attractive person. I just ignore the human as a whole and I go to their chest. That is an example of unhealth. That is an example of, okay, now why do I do that? And how can I break that mental pattern so that I can start seeing people as whole humans? I don't want to, I would almost say like even whole bodies, but I don't want that to come across as a sexual thing, but it's more of like, you said the term the other day, it's parts versus the
sum of the person. Yeah. You know, like I think about, you know, there are situations in life that you walk through that you're not in control of, right? Let's say you go to a cocktail party, right? And there happens to be a woman there who wears a very low-cut dress or a very high-cut dress, whatever that could be, right? Let's say that's the situation.
Very form-fitting.
Yeah, even. Very form-fitting. So you're just moving through life.
And by the way, I'm just going to pause and go, we're not necessarily saying that's a bad thing.
That's right. You know, that's their choice. It's not for, this person is not causing you to stumble. I want to make sure that I say that person. So, but because of maybe previous patterns in your life, what you do is you are aware, because you never heal unless you become more aware. So that's important to become aware.
Number one, know your patterns.
Right, know your patterns. And then let's say that person is a friend of you and your wives, and they come over to talk to you, right? So the best thing you can do, and you've said this before, that like you'll watch me at times in these situations. And so you make very sure that you make eye contact, because sometimes like you're just looking in something, you know what I mean? Like
comes into your view.
Right, and just comes into your view. But you just become very deliberate in that situation and say, hey, I'm aware of this, so I'm going to make eye contact. I'm not going to shun and run out of the room and stab a knife into my eyes or anything like that.
Yeah,
but
because
you're going to be a normal person.
Right. But I think that's actually a really important point, because and we'll get into this in a little bit, one of the pieces of advice is typically like, don't look at women if you find them attractive. Basically, you find someone attractive and you just like bounce your eyes. And I have to say, from lived personal experience, that's hurtful.
It is hurtful.
Because to the woman, because what we want, to your point, is we, as women and as men, we want to move through the world in a healthy way. And we also, as women, don't want to think that I'm constantly being objectified. And so it's really a catch-22 when a man thinks the way not to objectify a woman is to just not look at her. Well, what happened in my life is when I would walk through a room and people wouldn't look at me, I felt objectified, because
it was reverse objectified.
No, I felt objectified because I knew why they wouldn't look at me.
Right.
And I'm like, well, they must find me attractive, and so they won't look at me, and that hurt my feelings. Not that I wanted to be objectified. That I can't, like, you can't look at me and have a conversation. Like, you have to constantly, like, we're talking and you can't like look at me in the eyes. You know what I mean? So I think that advice goes to the extreme. And we've talked about spiritual bypassing, but bouncing your eyes is just healing bypassing. It's not that, and I want to be, this is why we wanted to do this in a podcast episode too, is because there's so many aspects of it to talk about. Like, this could be 3 parts probably, and we'd still have something to say about it. So we won't hit everything, unfortunately. But it's one of those things where it's like, there are layers to this, right? So you're out in the real world. we'll just use that exact example. Let's say it's like one of my friends. She's very pretty and she looks very attractive in whatever outfit she's wearing. And you, being someone in recovery, is going to view her as an attractive person, but look at her as a human being. Think about her as a whole human with emotions, with a soul, with family, with being my friend. Like, it's the entity of a total human, as opposed to, oh, this is like a body part that's here to serve my sexual desires.
Right.
Those are two very different things.
Yeah.
And then me, as someone who has wounds in the past, but also knows that you're in recovery, may observe your observation of that person and go, oh, like, he's relaxed, first of all. So that's going to give me a cue that nothing is happening, that you're able to kind of navigate and just not be stressed, not be triggered, not be activated. You're looking at them in the eyes, you're thinking about them as a human, you're talking, engaging. It's not like fear-based is a big clue. Like, it's not a fear response, right? And then we may have a conversation about it later. So I just sort of understand, hey, like, what were you thinking? And also, I think this is one of those things on the betrayed person side to go, when you're thinking about boundaries in this area, like, we do want the addict to get to a place where they can navigate the world and be healthy. But we also have to respect that at different phases of recovery for the individuals in the couple, those may be very triggering for the betrayed partner. And so sometimes boundaries at different points in recovery have less to do about where he is and more to do about where you are. And so sometimes that has to be respected as well. So a really common example of that is betrayed partners maybe not feeling comfortable going to their spouse to like a pool, for example, or like on beach vacations for a long time, or for some people, maybe that's a permanent thing. But that is more of, hey, my husband may be able to totally handle that, but can I? So that also needs to be part of the conversation as well.
Well, and that's why I led with the discussion of arousal template, because if you fully understand what that is, so like in my case, my complete arousal template, which was wounds, anxiety, never addressing trauma, which is the root of everybody's arousal template, right? And hard things in life. And then private moments. So my arousal template never had anything to do with being at a beach, being in a pool, being in a cocktail party. That was never my arousal template. So in my mind, where I always have to be mindful, and that's why you're going to laugh at this. That's why I journal every day. That's why I check in on my faster scale every day. That's why I
hope everyone's keeping track at this point. Yeah. Did you hear him say journal in this episode?
Right. But that's why I do that, because
we actually have some sort of game at the end of the year. Somebody submits like how many times you said journal
or something. Yeah, right.
Well, let's not encourage co-addictions, Patrick.
That's right. But it's so I just have to be, once again, you don't heal unless you become daily aware. So I'm very aware when there is, like, my level of awareness goes up when I'm entering private situations. And not like some sort of like...
What do you mean private situations?
What I mean by that is like, I travel a lot for work. So I'm very deliberate about that. And when I say level of awareness, but I'm very deliberate. But I also remember... So now it's such a practiced maneuver. I bring my survival kit. I don't turn on the TV in the rooms. I have a plan. I go to bed at a certain time. You don't sit alone at a
bar, I don't think.
Yeah, right. So I'm very deliberate. Now, early on when I first started traveling... It did worry me, right? It was a little bit like, oh my goodness, like,
because you didn't trust yourself yet.
I hadn't proven to myself yet that I can do these things. So because of that, I was even a little bit more deliberate. Like the first time you went away from home, it was about 10 months into recovery. I had somebody already scheduled that I would call every night, right? Even though Keegan was in the house, I had somebody that I called every night. I was very in tune with trying to understand. And that was about my arousal template. So here's the thing, like you have to be aware of where you are in recovery. So because you're not going to be as good at 6 months as you are at 4 years. Mm-hmm. And so if it's like maybe going to a wedding is off the table for the first year and a half or something like that, because it's just too triggering to both of you. Maybe say whatever the situation was. To your point, maybe going to a pool is off the table for a while. And then when you get ready, maybe you say, hey, let's go to the pool for an hour. And then we, hey, how did we do? Can I check in? How did you do? I did fine. You know what I mean? And so you just build those, so it's like anything. It's like you're learning how, and sometimes what happens is I think the betrayed gets this 1,000%, but the addicted does not get this, is your whole life up until the point of discovery, all of those discovery or whatever, has led you to this healing journey. Your whole life's patterns have been driving you towards, it's been perfectly designed to drive you towards this addictive behavior. So now you're going to have to so that's why 90 days in, you're not there yet, because you've only got 90 days versus decades, right? And then, but once you're at 6 months versus decades, a year versus decades, a year and a half versus you're starting to tip that balance. And so, there is and as you move through the world, you can kind of learn these different patterns. My therapist told me early on, he's like, if somebody walks in front of you and they're attractive or whatever, just say a prayer for them, because saying a prayer for somebody is
humanizing them.
You're humanizing that person,
and you're putting care into it.
Somebody's mom, somebody's wife.
Well, one word that
daughter,
will come up. One word that will come up for sex addicts when they're communicating their behaviors a lot of times is like things like it doesn't have any emotion behind it, or it's transactional, or it's like it's putting a coin in the slot of the addiction machine, right? So it's just it's just this thing to do to get this outcome, right? So what you're saying essentially is when you take away the outcome, so you're not going to act out, you're not going to engage in the patterning, and then you humanize the person, is a totally different experience, right? So when you're talking about that, you're taking the transactional away, and you're remembering that there's someone with it's more than a body, it's a spirit and a soul.
That's right. Yeah.
So I think there was a lot of things that kind of came up when you were talking that I want to clarify a little bit and kind of go into, break down a little bit more. But before we do that, I want to add just this little piece that you said, hey, objectifying women in the real world was never part of your patterning. You had and that's true. I don't know what percentage that would be for a lot of addicts, but a lot of them do have this compartmentalization where it doesn't translate into the real world. But some of them do, and it does translate in. So they will, and so kind of the example that we're talking about, and I want to specifically address this with this question, is some men will go out into the world and have very specific real world, navigating the real world, going to Kroger, going to Walmart, going down the street, going to work, whatever it is, things that they will be exposed to that their mind, that was part of their acting out pattern. So let's say this particular example is yoga pants.
Right.
And this isn't necessarily the only time I've heard this. And I want to I'm going to put a little asterisk here that sometimes this is particularly will show up in faith-based communities where things were sexualized in a way that shouldn't have been sexualized at a young age. It's like the idea of the 1800s going, ankles are sexy, so we have to wear floor-length skirts, versus today, like everybody's like, oh, ankles all the time. Like it's not a sexualized thing, right? It's kind of the same idea. A lot of times in faith, really conservative or really strict or really rigid religious structures will put extraordinarily high modesty boundaries on. And it has the opposite effect, I think, of what the original intent was, which is over-sexualizing everything.
Right.
So then when people go, oh, women have to wear boxy clothes, women have to wear dresses, women have to, do X, Y, Z for me to not lust, then what that tells their subconscious is if someone wears tight pants, if someone's wearing gym clothes, if someone's wearing, their shoulders are showing, their legs are showing, whatever it is, if they're wearing fitted clothing, if they're wearing a fitted dress, if they're wearing yoga pants, or if they're wearing jeans sometimes, that those things are sexualized. And there's a lot of times, very unfortunately, that in faith-based communities, it is a subconscious programming that young men get in their mind from a very young age that these things are sexual.
Yeah.
And part of recovery is literally identifying that pattern, and then they're going to have to deprogram from that.
Yeah.
They're going to have to learn that that's actually not inherently sexual, that they can see these things and not be sexual, not sexualize them.
I remember being shocked when I moved here, and you and I were kind of working through things, and then Keegan was going to like some church camps, and there was this whole notion of like girls can't wear bikinis
or spaghetti straps,
and it made me laugh because I grew up in a beach town, right, in a very hot area. If anybody had ever approached a girl and told her they couldn't wear a bikini or a spaghetti strap, it's so impractical because it's so hot and it's such a beach town, and you just wear what you wear, right? And so it is interesting because like some of that is born out of the fact that in August it's going to be 50 degrees, right? But it's like it lacks in practicality, and I always feel like in those situations, like I feel bad for if you're a 12-year-old boy and nobody's talking to you, and you go to this camp and you're like, you really like the youth pastor, and then you hear that message and you've got nothing else to bounce it again.
Exactly.
You carry it, right? You carry it with you and you go, oh my gosh. And then
to the women too.
Yeah.
Because the women going to these camps, they maybe at home they wear normal clothes, and then all of a sudden they go to a camp that's supposed to be safe, and it has a faith background that they share, and then all of a sudden they're told, hey, get rid of all your normal clothes and you can only wear baggy t-shirts, and even if you have a one piece, you have to wear a t-shirt over it in the pool, or whatever it is, right? And all of a sudden, you have these girls that never was I aware of my body until that modesty modesty rule was implemented, and now I'm like, wait, why?
And I'm a danger.
Yeah, why would my body be a problem? Why do I have to hide it? Why, So it's problematic on both sides. But I just wanted to bring that in because sometimes I think as adults, when we're recovering from betrayal, when we're recovering from addiction, that piece, if you were exposed to it, if we don't take that into account during recovery, we may be missing a huge opportunity, because that will take, if these were things that were really integrated strongly and then associated with quote unquote goodness, but they hurt you in some way, then that's deep. It can be deep spiritual confusion around these things, and it can complicate the recovery process. So I just want to say that, because I think a lot of times when this comes into the real world and, things like jeans or things like yoga pants are sexualized, I don't know if it's all the time, but a lot of times, sometimes it has that background. So I wanted to make sure I just made a note there about that.
Well, also too, I think it's always important to understand where you're going, right? So if you were raised, or if it was part of your arousal template or whatever, that yoga pants were the thing that got you, right? Where you're going is where yoga pants aren't a thing.
Yeah.
Where you're going is as you navigate through that. And I remember this hit me at some point, I don't know, 2.5 years or 3. I think you and I started talking about it, and I was like, I just go through life making good choices. And it took me a while to kind of recognize that that's what my brain had started to do. Right. It wasn't that I had made bad choices after recovery. I was just in this like, what I mean?
Well, that's one of the things that I wanted to bring up from your comment earlier, was this idea of the word trigger. So let's break that down, because it's a word that we can use in a variety of different ways. But this is why I think communication between partners is so important during these specific instances. So you really get into their mindset and what do they mean? What do they mean when they say they're activated? What do they mean when they say they're triggered? Because when you and I were talking about answering this question, I was asking you questions about, well, what if this happened? What if this happened? How would you feel? And so let me just kind of break that down. What I mean is it a fear-based trigger of my body is activated because I saw, well, just use yoga pants. I saw yoga pants. Was I sexually aroused and that equals trigger? Or was my body activated because this was part of my old acting out pattern? It's not anymore, but I was afraid to be exposed to it. And so that brought up an activation, which is actually just a hyper awareness.
It is.
As opposed to, so it's a fear-based response as opposed to a sexual arousal response. And I think that's an important distinction, because the fear-based response says, I actually want to do the right thing. And I'm like checking, like I don't want to fail here. The sexual arousal response is, I maybe haven't done the work to break all the patterning.
Yeah, exactly. And so you do go through, you will have these moments. And I remember I had them, like around you, because you never knew fully what was going through my head, right? And so I know there were situations that there was a couple things. So like, it's the, I think and hopefully I can explain this right. So my mom used to say, if you put her on top of a building, that she always felt like she was going to jump over the railing and jump off, right? And she was just afraid of heights. That's all that was. It was like an intrusive thought, right, for her. But of course she was not going to jump over the railing and jump. So I remember, and I had explained this before, that I felt like I was responsible for everybody's acting out in the entire history of the world, like after betrayal, because I felt so bad and all these different things. And so there's a strip club in our town, and it's right there by Whole Foods, so we have to go by it, right? You know, a lot of ways. I would be so heightened, and I would be like, look straight ahead, look straight ahead, look straight ahead. It was never a place I even went to. I didn't do it, you know what I mean, and stuff like that. But it was like I was so heightened. I was afraid that I just was afraid, right? I was afraid. It had nothing to do with...
Yeah, it's not like you drove past it and you were like, oh, I'm going to go act out.
Right.
It's not like there was like some sort of sexual arousal response. That's not what you mean by trigger there. If you used the word trigger in communicating that to me, what you meant was I became very hyper aware of my surroundings because I was aware that there was something sexualized about that, and I didn't want to engage in some way. And I wanted to check in with my body and my mind and see like, where am I going with this? Am I safe? Am I okay? Yeah.
Yeah. And so today, like in that situation, I barely even like register anymore that it's there. You know what I mean? But I'm a human being, so I know it's there, right? Because I'm aware that there's a Panda Express on the corner, like like the way you are, because you move through life, you just make good decisions. But it no longer carries that big.
Yeah, because what you mentioned earlier is that you now trust yourself, and I think that's the key. So like it's number one, it's becoming aware of the patterns. Like what were the patterns that actually used to trip you up? So in this particular example, yoga pants were a thing. Like it was a thing that was dwelt on. Maybe it was utilized to act out in images in his mind, or, who knows? I don't know the specifics here, but we'll just use that as the example. So you have to understand the pattern. Then you go, okay, well, where did these come from? And like what, with all acting out patterns, so why was it this particular avenue? And the book Unwanted is really good for that in terms of connecting like the specific patterns that you use to act out in your addiction behavior. Maybe not always, but generally will point to something specific in your life. So that's why with my awareness and understanding about why sometimes genes are sexualized or whatever, that's why I specifically mentioned the religious backgrounds sometimes, because that can play a huge role in, like sometimes like I might hear that, just as an example, let's say that someone was raised in a super conservative culture and then that was sexualized. And then as they go through, maybe they looked at pornography, or maybe they, did some other acting out or whatever. So it got kind of extreme, but in their desire to be healthy in recovery, they're now questioning everything. And again, kind of like the modesty rules, when you aren't sure of yourself as an addict in recovery and you're not feeling grounded and you're feeling hyper aware, you can accidentally over sexualize things that are still normal.
That's right.
So that's why it's like this balance of figuring out why that was part of the acting out pattern in the first place, and then going through recovery to a deep enough place that your nervous system can feel calm, even if something you previously sexualized is intentionally or unintentionally exposed to you in the normal world. And that was one of my questions was, okay, so you said the real world stuff was never an issue for you. It was always compartmentalized into this online box. So I was like, well, what if something like old school computer, this would never happen today, but like old school computers used to have these pop-ups. I was like, so pretend today that we're back like 20 years ago, we had these pop-up things, and all of a sudden you were exposed today in the recovery level that you're at to a video image or something that just started playing that was a part of your acting out experience previously. And the reason I say that is because someone listening might go, you haven't sexualized people in yoga pants. So I want to bring an example that is close enough that it answers the question. So for you personally, something that was in your acting out pattern, you have a video pop up, it starts playing, something that you previously would have acted out to. What do you do and how do you feel? What would your response be today?
Okay. So, I mean, obviously if I was, doing whatever the computer, I would close it, right? I would absolutely close it. I think what I would then also do is I would check in with myself. I'm like, okay, how am I feeling? Because I would probably get triggered, like nervous, like, whoa, what the heck was that? Because it would be a surprise. And I might even be like, did I click on something? Like it would be a little bit of like a after action review. It'd be like, was there something that happened?
How did that pop up?
That I brought that up. And then knowing me, I would probably get really sad You know what I mean? Because I'd be like, oh, that was like a pattern of mine that really makes me sad because it hurt a lot of people and it hurt me. You know what I mean? Like I would probably go through that, but then I'd be fine. You know what I mean? Like it wouldn't
So the
arouse
question on
me
every
or
that's
anything
the
like that.
question on every betrayed partner's mind is there this immediate amygdala fear-based sexual arousal thing that just happens beyond your control?
No, not at all. Not at all. And let's say the fear. I talked about the fear and the anxiety that maybe had come about from. If that was lingering in me after let's say I went for a walk or whatever, then I would reach out to somebody, be like, "Hey, can you just walk me through this because I'm feeling pretty dysregulated or I'm feeling anxious or something like that."
Nobody wants to accidentally be a betrayed partner doesn't want to accidentally be exposed to something after you've gotten into good healing. It can be super nervous system activating even if you didn't do anything wrong. Right. So that totally makes sense. I think just going back to the core wound of the betrayed partner, it's can we really have an expectation that you are exposed to something that you found sexually arousing and attractive in the past as part of your acting out problem? Can we really expect you to get into a place of recovery enough where you could be exposed to something like that and nothing bad happen?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think there's two elements to it. And as I was listening to you talk, and I'm thinking about the example that was brought up in the question and some of our own experiences, there's two things that are at play here. Number one, it's your own individual healing, right? And the notion that you have a choice to act out or not. And all of the things that you've practiced in health are going to come into play when you're in a situation that activates you, right? So that's why you have all the defense in depth mechanisms that you've established through the years, checking in with people, talking about things. Then there's the notion of relational health. So let me just make sure I can kind of give a good example here. Sometimes men may get fearful because they're worried about how their spouse is going to react. So like when you and I went to Curacao, right? There were some people at our hotel that dressed
very pretty women walking around in bikinis all day, every day.
Right. And so
we'll just say it the way it was because I was noticing every single one of them.
So I was not triggered. I was aware, right? I was aware. I was not triggered. But what I misfired on with you was getting in front of you early enough, early in the week, be like, hey, are you okay? What do you need to do? What do we need to maybe do differently to make sure that you're okay? Because we kind of went, I think we got there on a Saturday. Thursday, we had a blow up, and it was about that. And actually, I hadn't done anything.
You hadn't done anything, no.
I hadn't done it, but you were feeling very unsafe. And in turn, I probably wasn't responding in the best way. So that was about a relational health thing. So this question is about individual health of the addict, which is a very valid thing. But it's also about relational health. And so I think what I've learned more and more is anytime there's these situations, I need to do a better job as the recovered addict of checking in with you and going, hey, I'm thinking this could be a situation that might trigger you a little bit. Are you okay? Is there anything you need from me? Is there anything that I've done that, you know what I mean, that can be, or whatever. And that's, once again, it's a gift, right? It can turn into, because even after we had a little bit of a rupture, we connected, and then it was actually kind of really nice. It was but we had like 2 days left on vacation. It was like, oh, darn it. But the point being is you have this opportunity. If you walk into a pool with your wife and she's triggered, you can turn to her and go, hey, what do you need from me right now? Like, are you okay? We can leave. If you want to leave. Like, you always think about it this way. And I don't want to compare anyone to being a little kid, right? That's not at all what I'm doing. But when you have really little kids and you go, I always remember this. Like, I took Keegan one time to Dave & Buster's down in Cincinnati, and we got in the car on a Saturday afternoon. He sleeps all the way there, right? He's probably 5, right? He sleeps all the way there. We get there. I get him out of the thing, wake him up. We walk into Dave & Buster's. He's not having it. So I didn't try to just make it through Dave & Buster's with him. About 5 minutes in, I packaged him up again, put him back in the car. He went back to sleep. I drove home. He needed sleep. Yeah. And so the point being is it's not about being a little baby or whatever. That's not what I'm saying. It's like in all of these situations where there is the desire to seek safety individual and relational health, you have the opportunity to turn towards each other. And there is no requirement that you go to a pool. There is no requirement that the addict who had his own laptop gets another laptop, right? So these things.
So I'm just going to play devil's advocate here, though, because we're talking about a situation very specifically that is the normal world.
Sure.
You're going to go to Kroger. You're going to go to the grocery store. You're going to see someone wearing yoga pants. So I'm trying to think of like an example that would maybe. I just want to make sure we're addressing the specific issue because, pools, while they may be triggering for me and not you, are something that, like, if we chose to, we could totally avoid.
That's right.
I can't, you're going to see people out in the real world that are wearing jeans, that are wearing short shorts, that are wearing V-necks, that whatever the thing may be, right? So I think that's the key here is answering the question of, if you find another human being other than me attractive, where is the line there?
Well, I don't. I mean, I really don't. And I'm not saying that to answer the thing. I don't. I think.
Well, attractive versus sexual arousal. I think we have to clarify.
Oh, okay. So this is so crazy because you taught me this like in week 2 of recovery. I had gotten a copy of Every Man's Battle, and it was the reverse objectification, bounce your eyes, go jump off a cliff, whatever. Like and you were like, no,
that's fear based.
Yeah, it's fear based. And if it was, you were like, hey, if somebody comes into the room and they're pretty, they're just pretty, and then you move on. And so like I think you're if you see somebody who is, I don't know, like I use the example of hair, or you know what I mean, or somebody's quote unquote fit, you know what I mean? Like I can respect the effort that they put into getting fit. I don't have to go and then, you know what I mean, and then go down this road. I can like the same. You and I joke about Liam Hemsworth, but like
Chris Hemsworth.
Thank you. So like Thor, yeah, the guy who plays Thor. I mean, he's in great shape. I respect that.
Patrick has a man crush.
Yeah, he's in great shape, but I actually think he's funny, and I just think he'd be a fun guy to hang out with. I don't know if he really is or not, because he probably doesn't act like Thor in his personal life. But you know what I mean? It's like I just think he's, and I respect the effort that goes into, and I'm sure there's some genetic components to to his fitness, but. Like I wouldn't, when I look at you, like because of your health, I could see even you going, man, he's in really good shape and he's a handsome guy. I don't have an issue with that. Yeah. Now, granted, you weren't an addict, but it's that same, if you just listen to the way I describe that,
right.
I respect the effort that it takes for him to become fit.
Yeah.
And he's a handsome guy.
Right.
You can do the same thing with a woman. Now, here's the thing that I would caution people on. In this exercise of learning how to be healthy, if every time you see somebody who's attractive, you turn to your wife who's been betrayed and you go, hey, I find her attractive. I respect the word. You know what I mean? Like you got to be a human being that reacts with empathy. But if you're asked, hey, do you think she's pretty?
Don't lie.
Don't lie. Just say yes. Now, there was actually an example. I think is it Captain Marvel or whatever? It's the actress who plays Captain Marvel or whatever. There was a movie, we were in this whole Marvel watching thing, right? And we were going to watch the Captain Marvel movie, and you turned to me and you said, do you think she's pretty? And I said, yes, I think she's pretty, because I wasn't going to lie to you, right? And I'm not thinking about her. You asked me an objective question, and I answered, and you said, well, I don't really want to watch the movie then. But that's okay, right? It's just a movie. Like, it's really all right. So I was not.
Sometimes I think it's funny, the examples you remember.
Yeah. Well, but
like, wow, you remember that?
Yeah, but the point is, I wasn't sexualizing her. Right. I wasn't even thinking about her. You asked me a question. I answered. And then you are allowed to make a decision. And I'm allowed to, or whatever, to go along with that. The point was, I was being honest, and I wasn't objectifying her.
Right, which is going to, in some ways, build more trust. So the more honest you are, even if the answer is like a little uncomfortable, right? But it's true. And so then you guys can navigate that based on where you are. Okay, so is there enough health and comfort and safety in the individual healing and the couple's healing that now you're like, okay, well, I'll go watch the movie and I just know that. And but we've clarified there's nothing negative happening. Or is that a situation where, well, I really just don't want to sit for 2 hours and think about the fact that he finds her pretty. And that I don't think he's going to be thinking about that for 2 hours, but I will. So maybe that's not the best decision where we are in our relationship right now,
Yeah,
right?
and, you know, I say this at work sometimes when you're like, you ask the boss or something, they say no. I always tell people, no today is not no forever. And so like maybe, and that really applies in recovery too. Now there may be some things that no today is no forever,
right?
But hey, no today is not no forever. So as you move into healing, and we've experienced this, that things that were, I always bring up that example. You'll never travel alone again. You said that. You actually said, you probably don't remember that, but you said that. I travel all the time now by myself, and it's very safe, and we're connected, and we stay in touch with each other, and it's really okay. We just miss each other, right? So when people speak in absolutes, you'll never, or I will never, that's usually indicates that there's still a lot of wounding there. And so, that's just a process that has to take place. Yeah.
So I think the other piece of her question is sort of, it's very specific, right? So she was kind of asking her husband, do you notice, what is it that you're noticing? Are you noticing that her eyes are pretty, that her chest is pretty? And he's like, well, it could be anything, right? So then her follow-up was, well, do you think a recovering sex addict should be noticing specific things like yoga pants or like the shape of someone's body or like a body part or whatever? Is that quote unquote healthy?
In the kindest of ways that I can say this, I'm going to say there's more work that needs to be done if you're noticing that. Because I don't know where the person is in their recovery journey, and I know there's some things that can sometimes maybe surprise you as you're moving through your journey. You're feeling super solid, and then maybe there's a really, really difficult part of life. You have a parent die, and then you get sick, and then there's a financial difficulty. You know what I mean? And like all of these things that are part of building that pain, and then boom, something hits you, and you go, "Whoa!" So it just shows you that. So I would say, anytime you're looking at a body part,
specifically
sexualizing, objectifying, and it's not healthy, and it's not a healthy description, then you've got more work to do.
Right. So then, the follow up to that is there any time where you just notice someone and maybe it comes into your awareness? I never want to put any sort of negative blame on how people are dressed.
Yeah.
But sometimes, like I tried to raise Keegan where if a woman walked down naked, walked down the street naked, your response instead of sexualizing her should be, oh, I wonder what happened in her life that's happening. Should I go help her?
Empathy, sorrow.
Right. Yeah. Humanizing the experience as opposed to going, that's something for my consumption.
Correct.
So in that specific example, there's no way that you're not going to notice if she has nice body parts, right? Because it's like thrown into your awareness, right? You're like, oh. So there will be, I don't think as a human being, if there's something like that is put into your awareness, that there's a part of your brain that will register it on some level. But it's how does your nervous system respond and how does your brain respond and what's the follow-up action to that, right? Like if a guy is in a movie or at the pool, let's just say as an opposite example for women, and let's say he has like a six pack and he's super tan and like whatever it is, right? Like he just, to your point, maybe it's Chris Hemsworth. He looks like Thor and he's like in really good shape. Like, it's like this unusual level of in fit or whatever. Okay. So there will be something in your brain that registers that is a fit, attractive human. Right. So, but then it's like, okay, well, what do you do with that? Are you going to sit at the pool and ogle him the whole day? Are you going to, what do you do with that information? Same thing, I think, with the answer to if somebody's noticing a part, like, is it because they are in a habit of going, I'm going to look at people's chests and go 0 to 10. Is this how do I rate this? And that is sexualizing that person. And so there's an intention behind that. Or are they walking through life and they bump into somebody and they're like, oh, like all of a sudden they look down and someone's wearing a really low cut shirt and it's something that was unavoidable. Yeah. But then they move on and they don't do anything. That's like normal life. Like there's a level to which we will be exposed to things, sexualized or not, that our brain will make a little mental note about because it's something that our eyeballs saw.
Yeah.
But I think what you're saying is, where does that go? What do we do with it? And how do we respond once that happens?
Yeah.
And if we can respond more and more like in the present moment where our bodies do not get activated, our brains do not get activated, because we know that we can be someone in recovery. We don't have to believe that we're monkey brains that have no control. And then we are able to navigate life in a calm, connected, grounded way. Then that belief, and I think that is so key, and that's something you and I worked through in the very beginning, this belief that like I have control. I'm not like, you always make the joke, I'm going to run off into the woods and act out. No, you're not. Like you have control.
Right.
Your mom wasn't going to jump off the balcony. Like we actually have control. And so this belief in our culture that then addiction kind of, it's a belief that we have that we don't have control because culture says you're just a boy, you don't have control. And then addiction goes, see, you don't have control. You're out of control. This is compulsive. You live into it, right? So recovery, we really have to counter that with, no, I have control. I can be exposed to anything. Now, there are things we obviously wouldn't want to just go practice that with. There are lines there, but I am in control. I could be exposed to anything at any time and not do anything bad with that.
I always feel like here's and now it is different because of the view, but think about it maybe this way. An alcoholic, right? When they first go through recovery, they don't go to a restaurant or a bar that serves beer or anything like that. But maybe over time, they're so secure in their recovery that they can go with a friend to a bar. They don't drink, they drink water, and their friend drinks beer and whatever, and they just live their life. But going a different route would be, well, I'm going to buy some beer and put it in my fridge at home, and I live alone and see how I do. Like, why do that? That's that's really stupid. So I just feel like sometimes what we do in these conversations is we're talking so much about the addict, but I'd like to extend that and say I think any objectification of humans is not right. So like, if you think about all of these things, so certainly a lot of men have gone to strip clubs and that's really bad. And but you could even, what is it, Chippendales or whatever, like that's objectification too. You know what I mean?
You mean?
No, Chippendales, I think, is the men that
Oh.
yeah. And
see, that's so like out of my awareness. I'm like, wait, what?
Right, yeah. So it's like, but it is
like Magic Mike.
Yeah, it's now it quote unquote fun, but that can be the lie, right? That it's fun, it's harmless, it's all these things. But okay, is it? You know what I mean? So are we viewing these people as whole people?
Right.
What exactly are we doing?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It always goes back to how do you view other human beings?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So I think you don't necessarily have to be a sex addict to objectify somebody. You can objectify somebody, without that. And so now this is not a call for all the recovered addicts to go, go after your wives and be like, see, you're objectifying people too. Keep focusing on your own recovery. But my point is that there is a lot, unfortunately, society teaches objectification and not seeing people as the whole person. And there's examples of that. There's the purity culture side. And there's the sexual
Everything
promiscuity
goes.
side. I mean, there's all of this. But if you just view somebody as and I remember what really hit me and filled me with deep sorrow post recovery, and I knew this in my addiction, but it really, as I started to heal, was like somebody's wife, somebody's girlfriend,
right.
somebody's daughter, somebody's mom. You know what I mean? And it broke my heart.
Yeah. Okay, so to kind of like wrap up this idea of once you're both in a healthy place, you as a recovered addict should be able to navigate the world even if you are exposed to things that used to be triggering to you. Mm-hmm. And maybe be aware, but not, to be very specific, not be aroused by them. Maybe your nervous system would be activated, but not in a sexual way, I am more aware of my surroundings. I'm going to check in with myself. And if there's any need to remove yourself from the situation, that would be the action taken.
That's right.
But if it's sort of a normal human situation, like you're in the middle of a grocery store, then you just go, okay, I'm going to move through this. I'm just going to keep moving through my list and checking out. And I'm not going to checking out the food items in the checkout, not the women.
Yeah, right.
And I'm going to progress that way.
And it's important to say this because you may not be there in your recovery journey, because 3 to 5 years, right? And so you may get surprised by something. You may have been doing really, really good 8, 9 months or whatever. But this is why you stay committed to the process, because then you can go, interesting. And this is like, if I would guarantee that if you experienced something, let's say where you found somebody sexually arousing or something like that, that if you go back and look at your faster scale that you're checking in on daily, that you would find that you had some other emotions that were dropping you down that scale. So that's the important work, to then go to your group or go to your therapist and say, I had this thing happen. So it's not about squelching it, because that's why you became an addict. It's about addressing it head on and saying, hey, there's some more work I need to be doing here.
Yeah. And the same thing for the betrayed partner. The example you gave about the movie is a really good example of that was more my activation, my wounding still kind of maybe being present than yours in that particular example. And so both individuals need to become aware of what their patterns are and what their wounding and what their fear and what their triggers are. And both need to actively work on resolving those. And then also becoming aware of what the other person's sensitivities are.
That's right.
So then I can work on my level of confidence in my body. I can work on my level of confidence in the world and in who I am as a human being and all this kind of stuff, so that I don't feel as threatened walking through the world. But then I also need to make sure, like, is this actually safe? Because are you going to act out? Like, is your mind also in a healthy place? And so both of those need to kind of be in alignment. I am safe and have worked on my wounds. You are safe and have worked on yours. And we're going to continue always having conversations around this to make sure, hopefully more proactively, to your point, sometimes reactively when it happens, because we're not perfect people.
Right.
In terms of like always being able to go, hey, I'm going to go to a festival outside today, and then I'm anticipating that there might be a trigger. Sometimes we can't do that. So sometimes it'll be reactively, but the more we go through recovery and have these conversations with each other and become more deeply aware of the healing of the other person and where they're at, we want to encourage each other that health is possible and continue moving towards that goal while also being aware of each other's sensitivities. This is a little bit of a longer episode, so we're going to wrap this up and then do a very, very short bonus episode again around this topic. So stay tuned. Every day is a new opportunity to choose health and freedom. Make that choice today, and we'll see you next week. Woohoo! If you're listening to this, it means you've made it through an entire episode. Part of recovery is spending time engaging in healing and self-growth activities. We are thankful that you chose our podcast to be one of those activities today. Make sure you reward yourself for that accomplishment. If you've enjoyed this episode or this podcast, we would love to hear from you. Please take just a few moments to leave a rating and review, letting us know your experience with Recover You. We not only love hearing how these episodes are helpful, but ratings and reviews help others just like you who are searching for recovery information and support find the podcast too. We can't wait to hear from you. See you next week.